So it's a Thursday evening. Wanted to show you my recent experience with this lunatic woman while I was working. I'm telling you, nowadays the battle isn't between left or right or having just simple differences of opinion, folks. We're at a point where a certain number of these Democrats are just lunatic. We're at a point where you can say the sky is blue and they think the sky is green, and they're willing to label you a bunch of other things. No matter how many times you give them evidence that it's blue, they just go with their feelings. Let me give you an experience that I just had. So while I was working, there was this woman who was visiting from Virginia. And I was trying to give her service and stuff. We were telling about where we were from. Okay, I told her I was from Southern California and she was from Virginia. Now, out of the blue, which, I'm not supposed to do that, but she did, that she came up with this idea that, I'm from Virginia. It's a blue state. We elected our first female governor of the state, and we're so anti-Trump. And I told her, I moved from California, which was away from a blue state. And the reason that I did that was because I wanted to effectively get away from the higher taxes, and it's easier to get housing permits and everything. I don't pay income tax. I don't pay capital gains tax, which means if I sell my stock, I don't have to pay the money that I could have to the California Franchise Board. Not to mention, with all the tax savings, it allows me to continue my business. And then she was like, I think taxes are very necessary to provide the essential services and everything, which it's true to an extent. Some services you can privatize, the roads, public safety, and so forth. However, I did tell her that the quality of our infrastructure here in Las Vegas, especially the highways, is better than what you get from Caltrans in California. And she, of course, just denied that. But when you drive our freeways in Las Vegas, they're pretty much in good shape. You can even see the super tall lights behind me in the 15 freeway. And so as you know, I told her that, basically with these higher taxes and services and everything, we typically get a lot of waste inefficient. So for one thing, a lot of these higher taxes go to highly paid public employees. And if you go online and look at their salaries, many of them make 10 times as much as I make, even though people like myself, this month, my bills are only going to be 60, 70% of my income. And of course, she denied that. And she's like, these high salaries are justifiable because of the very high cost of living. And I was like, okay, why is the high cost of living is high? Because when I came here, it's easier to get permits, plans, not to mention there's fewer codes, there's less NIMBYism, there's less opposition, zoning, all of that plays a significant role. And of course, she denied that, and she was like, all these stricter environmental health and safety codes are generally better, and they're more attractive, and so forth. And I was like, okay, maybe a little bit more. Maybe from 3 months, it could take 5 months. But nevertheless, as a result of what she supports, housing permits and everything could take years. And it's so difficult that a lot of builders just don't even end up bothering, and there's just less housing supply. And of course, she denied that. She got all angry and pissed off and everything. And we know exactly what happens, which I didn't tell her. We get low supply, higher costs, population moves out, the census numbers comes out, blue states tend to lose more seats as projected in 2030. Their response is, okay, let's just have a higher minimum wage, let's just do more rent control, more Section 8. And then, of course, she goes on a rant talking about her employer, how she has to pay all these taxes and benefits, which was kind of proving my point. And I didn't want to argue with her. I was just saying, okay, what system do you propose? You just question what they do, and they get so triggered. And then once, we got to a halt, I was like, okay, you talked about the first female governor, and I was like, I'm claiming that you think women are still oppressed. was like, well, okay, if you're so upset with men, why don't you just separate in your own country? And she was like, well, what evidence do you have that, we're so oppressed? I'm like, well, we're hearing this all over the apps, all over these activist women out there claiming that there's a, patriarchy or something, all this other stuff. She's like, well, yeah, I take care of my husband and everything. And then, of course, is like, and then all of a sudden, she just came, she started talking about Trump and ranting. I don't know why she brought up Trump, but just all of a sudden, when you disagree with them, they label you as a Trump supporter. So even if you're just pro-capitalist libertarian, they think you're a Trump supporter. You could even be a conservative non-Trump supporter. They think you're still pro-ICE, pro-immigration. You could even be a moderate who believes like California's gone too far, kind of like how Bill Maher thinks, and you're still a pro-Trump supporter, two-faced kind of a person. It's just absolutely insane. And then she brings up the color of my skin and everything. I said, first of all, yeah, it's true there's some people that did support Trump and want to deport because they're concerned about demographics. And I wanted to partially agree with her, give her a doubt. Then she goes on a rant about the color of my skin. Oh, because I'm not a white person, I'm not allowed to have these opinions about immigration. I'm like, first of all, it's unfair to my parents that came here legally. I told her where they came from, which was Iran. And then she was like, yeah, and I haven't been able to hear from my cousins in weeks because of what's going on. She gave some level of sympathy, but nevertheless, what she did was, she was like, yeah, and basically was like, well, all you women are so unhappy and many of you want to leave. And she's like, yeah, I've thought about leaving the country. And I was like, well, yeah, where do you want to go to? She's like, yeah, Canada, Australia, Western Europe. I'm like, yeah, Western countries. And I'm like, pretty much, like, she was basically pointing out that, yeah, I don't want to go to Abu Dhabi because how they treat women. I was like, yeah, Western countries. But yet, if we keep importing these women, which I didn't tell her this, from all these other countries, then we don't have those benefits anymore. We get outnumbered. This is the thing. So then she kept labeling me as being pro-Trump and pro-ICE, and I just smiled. I didn't even respond, but basically all the smiling pretty much does all the talking. But it's just unfair to the people that came in legally and did it the right way. But this is just how they think, because they believe that somehow we are a dumping ground for their anxiety and frustration with the president, and they just dump their frustration in random people like us who are doing their jobs just to make ends meet, to provide you a service, and you're just trying to pull our strings to think that, oh yeah, are we really on board with the MAGA agenda, or are we having solidarity with these so-called demonstrators, which what they are is they're just, trying to break into churches, creating chaos, trying to meddle with federal law enforcement, instead of actually doing things appropriately, going to Washington, demand immigration laws to be changed, so things can be done humanely. And in fact, what's even worse is it's not that they just want to abolish ICE. The heart of the issue is they don't want any enforcement. They think it's okay that their politicians put the needs of people who violated federal law, non-citizens, over the American people who are American citizens, and absolutely have zero enforcement of immigration whatsoever. No mandatory e-verify, no jailing of employers and politicians who pander to them, no tax on remittances, no crackdown on fraudulent fake social security numbers or end of birthright citizenship. And keep in mind, they were much different 15 years ago. But what changed? Again, their narrative has changed. The media, the academia got to them in the last 15, 20 years. Their perception on immigration is different. So now as a result, they do this on a very emotional basis. They create chaos to trigger us. So then if we get upset, we do something wrong, they're able to point fingers at us and say, oh yes, we're the troublemakers. Because I have a feeling she was trying to instigate. But again, I was having a good time. I was enjoying the debate. I was smiling. I enjoy wrestling. But again, it's not a very safe situation to be in. But this is what the situation we're in. They're willing to just approach random people, pull their strings as if that in case if they don't have if they have a slight disagreement with what they believe in, they can give them hell. And then once she got out, I was like, yeah, we're built, settled by Europeans. And she was like, F off. And let me tell you something. I could tell from looking at her, the way she looked, that, you know something? She was going to be one of those monsters. Because a lot of times these people, they look and act like a certain way. I'm not kidding. This is a serious, serious concern in our society. I'm not kidding, folks. And this is only going to escalate. I don't even know how we're going to be able to handle this in the coming years. You tell me. Male and female relations are not good. It's been going downhill. These people are just going to find the next issue to protest, more civil unrest. Where are we headed? The people voted. They voted in the last election. The president also got the popular vote. And one of the main issues was to control the borders and to get rid of the people who are here illegally. The polls show the vast majority of the people show that they want people who are illegally to be deported. Or at least you crack down the employers, you remove their incentives to leave. But these people assume that not one person is a criminal, that the gangs are all fake, the cartel activity is all artificial. And by the way, I'm pretty certain that the cartels, the foreign interests are behind a lot of these demonstrations, because what essentially Trump is doing is, or whatever it's going on, it's a threat to their system. And they have all this white guilt to think that, oh, we need these people here because they're unfortunate societies, because we strip their resources out and we're more successful and we have to give them more resources and attention. They're pushing this white guilt, this male guilt as well. And remember, it's disproportionately, women who are unmarried, who are unpartnered, white women who are pushing all of this. It's all done by design. This is exactly what's going on. And you have to really understand. So, where are we headed from here, folks? It's just never going to end. And people have trouble doing their jobs in many different professions because of the situation we're in. Once again, it's not 50 versus 50. What it really is, it's just a fringe number of people in this country who are really creating a domino effect. And I mean it. It's unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. And where she really crossed the line was, she was telling me, because of my skin color, that I'm not allowed to have these opinions on immigration. Because of my skin color, the Trump's going to come after me. So they are the ones who are judging people by the color of their skin, even though immigration law essentially doesn't define skin color. Now, some racists tend to violate it more. Yeah, sure. Some racists tend to have a better chance because they tend to qualify the requirements to come into the United States. And yeah, sure, there are some people who are concerned about demographics, and many of you in our channel, I gave her credit where it's due. But nevertheless, you're just bringing up skin color. This is where you're really starting to cross the line. Unbelievable. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. We got any comments or concerns or anything? Because, and I say, just bring it on, man. You're going to bring violence. You're going to bring more chaos. Let's see who's going to win. You have to have law and order, folks. I can't just run a red light and fight a police officer who pulled me over. Now, it depends. If the red light is malfunctioning, that's one thing. But nevertheless, you have to have traffic laws. If you don't like the traffic laws, lobby your local government to change the traffic policy. Put a roundabout. Put an overpass. Put a mass transit system. That's what you're supposed to do. What do you guys think? I'm going to sign out in a few seconds if I don't get any comments. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe out there. Stay tuned. I've got more clips to come. Thank you so much.